Every state has its folklore, and they have their folklorists, people who accumulate stories and ideas and family histories and some wonderful tidbits of and treasures of heritage that are preserved. And this is one lady that's been doing that. Her name is Velda Brotherton, and she's written some books. One is called Wandering in the Shadows of Time, and Fly with the Morning Dove, and then the Boston Mountains Lost in the Ozarks. And I'm glad to have you with me on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you. This has been a lot of fun at the Writers' Conference, hasn't it?
It sure has.
Do you feel a lot of that creative juices flowing in a room that size with a bunch of the writers?
When you're talking to other writers, you always get new ideas and exchange ideas.
Well, if it was guitar players, we'd have a room full of music then.
We would, yeah.
Because everybody's a contributor to each other's adventure. Your adventures have been around for quite a while. You've been writing a lot of books through the years.
Yes.
Your first one was Wandering in the Shadows of Time. We'll tell you about that one. This talks about you growing up in a log cabin during the Great Depression. Tell me about that.
I was born in a log cabin. I always throw that in wherever I go because it's unusual nowadays. But there were a lot of us were born in log cabins in Arkansas. My dad built it, and I was born there. And we moved out probably when I was 5 to go to town so I could go to school because there was no way for me to get to school. And it's now a part of Lake Fort Smith State Park, and my grandparents' place is on the hiking trail. They've excavated and have it all fixed up so they can include it on the hiking trail. But ours is down on the shores of the lake where you can have a picnic. It's really nice.
Well, tell me what I'll find in Wandering in the Shadows of Time.
Well, you'll find essays, how it felt to come back to Arkansas after being gone so long. My husband and I came back in '72, and I rediscovered my roots. So I started doing the essays and the way I felt about it. And then I went to work for a small paper, the Washington County Observer, and I started writing stories and interviewing people. And they were telling me how they felt about either staying in Arkansas or coming here themselves and rediscovering things. So I included a lot of those in there. Some of them are old people who had lived here for generations, and others are people who had come here, like Al Hauser, who was an Apache. I started to say a Cherokee, but he was an Apache, the first baby born after the Apaches came back from Florida, the Geronimo Apaches. So I found some really interesting people to interview, and that's just what the book is, interviews of those people. And I got to know their families. One of the families, when the two old folks died, who'd been married 75 years.
Wow.
They died, and the family called me to come see where they were buried because I had interviewed them earlier. So you get in with these families, and it really, it just stays with you.
What is it about Arkansas that helps it maintain its color?
I guess the remote areas, I think, where people live and they don't really care about the outside world. So they don't learn much about it. They've mostly got television and stuff, but that's not real to them.
Thank you.
It isn't real. It's just another world. And they are sure that their world is better. And I tend to agree with them somewhat because it's peaceful and quiet, and you don't have to go out in the hubbub. And they just don't get involved with it, I think.
So those are the things that haven't changed since you were a child, and even being gone, you come back, you found that same value here.
Right. Yeah.
What has changed the most?
What has changed the most is the influx of people from other places who come here and say, well, now we'll tell you the right way to do this. You know, you're not doing this right. That's what's changed the population. The Northwest Arkansas has just totally out of.
You're right, the influx. I have a little story that I tell, and usually in an interview I don't get to tell stories, so I'll tell you real quickly.
Okay.
There's a difference between an outsider and a newcomer.
Okay.
The newcomer comes with a toolbox full of his skills and talents and experience and says, where can I add on? What can I do to complement what's been done? Right. An outsider comes with his same experiences and toolbox and says, how can I change what you've done wrong all this time?
Right.
And they will forever be outsiders. If they live in Arkansas 50 years, they'll still be outsiders.
That's right. Because it doesn't need to be changed.
It's going to change on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, it will just naturally do it. We don't need
So we've gone from a log cabin in the Depression area in Arkansas to a ranch in New Mexico, chasing horses and cows and goats out there.
Right.
Probably great stories there. But now we're coming back home to Arkansas
Back
again
home.
with your latest book. Now this is called The Boston Mountains, Lost in the Ozarks. Now the Boston Mountains, just for those who don't know where those are, that runs through the whole western edge of Arkansas.
Right. It starts actually in Oklahoma in the Cookson Hills, the Boston Mountains.
What town is it close to, so we can give a geographic?
Well, it's going to be north of the Arkansas River Valley, so it's north of Fort Smith and south of Fayetteville. And it runs in just a little line. It's just a remote area through there that are called the Boston Mountains. And I can tell you why they're called the Boston Mountains.
Okay,
if
I
you
was
want to know.
about to
Has
ask.
nothing to do with Boston, Massachusetts. A long time ago, the slang was, it's the Boston, and it meant it's the hard way to go. If a fella did something and it was really hard, he'd say it was the Boston. I don't know where it came from that, but that's why they named this remote area of the Ozarks the Boston Mountains, because they are a hard way to go. They're very rugged, deep valleys and cliffs and bluffs, and some places still yet I don't think there's been a human.
And all kinds of stories too about
All
the people.
kinds of stories. There were little communities all through there. They settled there in 1828 when the Indians, this was Indian territory to begin with, and the Indians were sent to Oklahoma in 1828, and the white man was allowed to come in and settle. And of course, Cane Hill was the first place, but when you get down into the Boston Mountains, you had a lot of settlement there around the same time they were settling Cane Hill. But it's not as well known. So that's where I went. I went to these people who had family stories to tell. One gentleman lived in a cabin that was built in 1815 when they weren't even supposed to be in here. His ancestors built the cabin. And it's still there, and the picture is in the book.
Wow.
There are a lot of stories in there. I ran across wonderful stories as I was doing it. And, of course, President Obama's mother's people are buried in the Boston Mountains. I bet you didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
That's right, and I have a picture of the cemetery and their gravestones.
So that's 3 American presidents that have roots in Arkansas.
Yeah. That was an interesting story. Did some interviews with some of their descendants. And it's just and the reason it's called Lost in the Ozarks is because I'm always lost. I'm always lost, but the Boston Mountains are kind of lost too, so it's kind of a double meaning. But I just wander around and find my way back out.
This is a great collection. I mean, you're truly an American historian, not just an Arkansan historian, but you've told a lot of stories about the way life has been throughout the whole country.
Yes, I guess so. I used to do some historical things about Montana, because I always wanted to go there and never got the chance. So I wrote about Montana, and then after the books were published, I got to go there.
Oh, it kind of filled in the gaps.
Right.
Didn't it? Well, it's been great. We hope you'll take a look at Wandering in the Shadows of Time, and Ozark Odyssey, and then we have Fly with the Morning Dove. It's just a neat little ranch book all about life in the 1920s in New Mexico, and the Boston Mountains, Lost with Velda here, out there in the Ozarks.
Online and in bookstores.
All available online. We'll put your website up on the screen so you folks
Okay.
can go ahead and order, and we hope that you will enjoy this. I've certainly enjoyed our little visit.
Well, I have too. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being a part of it. This is Velda Brotherton. She's a great author from Arkansas, and she's a great communicator, tells good stories. You need to get the books. You'll find out how good they are. Look, don't you go away, by the way, because there's going to be another story coming up, and it could be all about you on the Out of the Norm show.